Welcome. Welcome to my channel. Um, I wanted to talk about the conversation that was being had actually for it looks like the last couple of days with 19 Keys. I actually do listen to 19 Keys, Billy Carson, Black Magic, 363, everybody. Miss Pravala. I do like more, if I'm going to be doing something in my house, I do like to listen to what they call as high level conversation. Before we start this off though, and get into like this video, because I'm not going to show the whole thing. I will be only showing a piece and just kind of talking about some points because therapy is a cult. Stop healing and start growing with 19 Keys and Raquel Hopkins. But before I start, I just wanted to quickly, if you can see it with this screen, I love perfume. And on my videos before, oh Lord, I used to always talk about scents and hair. And the one thing you could not stop me talking about is scents. So with this one, this is J'adore L'Or. And this is not a scent I would actually pay for and pick up myself. I actually got this as a gift from my boo. And for a very long time. And it's something that will never go out of style, just like Estee Lauder. Those things are just tried and true. This is a beast. A beast. Let's just be real. This is a beast. You do one spray of this, and you see I've made some dents. A couple times I thought I could spray it. A couple times, baby. You do this, and you'll be like they can smell you from down the hall around the corner. I do get a lot of compliments on this. I do mix it with this one brand called P Tight, and you can only get it in Texas or Georgia. And when I was living in Texas, and I lived in Arlington, Texas, I would go to the local beauty shop and mix it together. And together it is amazing because that one has like a strawberry, very sweet scent. And this one is more like more floral. It's very fresh. You can smell the jasmine with a different, like the orange blossom, that's very prominent. But it actually is very sensual and very feminine. So this is a very amazing scent. The top, not a big fan of. It does not stay on as well, but the spray, of course, because it's not a cheap brand, is amazing. And that spray, when you really smell the orange blossom and it almost smells like a honeysuckle. And I don't think honey's in there, but it has that scent, and I feel it smells really good. Now they opened up the conversation, and it was already like, I feel like she should have talked about herself more. I think it's always good to reintroduce yourself and to who you are. I actually have a little bit about who she is because I wanted to see if she was licensed. I just wanted to see if she even had the capacity to talk about mental health because I am not trying to be a gatekeeper, but I am someone who is actively in mental health and considered an intern counselor. I have affiliate counselor license. And also I have been in a supervisor role as a clinical supervisor. I think it's really important to make sure that you have the capacity and the wherewithal to have these type of conversations, because these conversations can be very dangerous if they're not stated properly. Of course, I listened to the whole thing, and we're going to take snippets because is it toxic? In some cultures, it's very hard, especially in like the black culture, Indian culture, and I mean like American Indian, Native American, which American Indian and Black are one and the same, but Native American culture. It is something that where you tend to talk to people who are experienced elders You talk to your parents. If your parents are the ones that are traumatizing you, then you talk to your siblings. If your siblings are the ones traumatizing you, then you talk to your cousin. So it tends to stay in the family. And getting help with a counselor is very hard for Black men, Black women too, Native Americans, and even a lot of Asian cultures. I don't see in the practice, the place that I'm at, I don't see a lot of Asian American Pacific Islander coming into where I'm at. So it can be very disenfranchising for a lot of individuals who don't know how to get help outside of their immediate circle. So yeah. So let's just hop into it, and then we'll talk about a little bit about her credentials. But let's hop into like the video. Okay.
About the attention economy of we have a wealth of information and a poverty of attention, and with we being overstimulated, right? It's like even you at a job and you have so many tasks to do, you start to get anxiety about it, right?
Right.
You don't know where to focus first. And a lot of people don't have good mechanisms that allow them to like organize themselves. Number one, to decrease that anxiety, to be clear and focused, right? So if you will, what are some mechanisms when it comes from a person that's death scrolling right now on the phone, searching for more dopamine hits because their life is not fulfilling,
Yeah.
right? So what are some ways that you find that work for people to gain more focus?
Let me tell you something. Social media can be the death of a lot of people's mentality. Since we used to have so much access to social media nowadays, it can be such a great tool to make money, great tool to get yourself out there, get your thoughts out to the masses. But then if you are just looking at people's highlights of their life and you're not really seeing how hard they work to get there, it can be something that is very detrimental for mental health, because you really are comparing yourself to someone that you might not know. And it is a measuring stick that you yourself will fall up short with if you don't feel fulfilled.
The first thing that comes to my mind is you're going to have to do the work, because I think that society has sold a bunch of mechanisms, right? And mechanisms are a temporary relief to feeling comfortable in the moment, right? So I can tell you that if you're overloaded right now, right? Take a moment, take a break, breathe. But you can't breathe your way out of unfulfillment, right? You're gonna have to go deeper and ask whatever those questions are. And I think what I see today is everybody wants to figure out how to strategize their life. You can't strategize your life. At some point, you have to transition from the how do you do something to the who am I? What is it that truly matters to me? Because if you never ask those questions, you'll continue to find yourself again on that rat race. So, and when you go back to this whole concept of being overloaded and the anxiety and those things kick in, one of the things that I don't think we talk about enough is that's just a sign of your cognitive ability. Like cognitively, you have not developed to respond to what's in front of you. And that's why I speak about capacity, because most people think about capacity from the standpoint.
Now let's just start this off. I'm gonna switch over because we're gonna come back to that. Because let's talk about capacity, because the capacity, she has a website called the Capacity Mindset, actually, or the Capacity Expert. And I'm gonna switch it over because I want you to know who Raquel Hopkins is. Okay, so first of all, she is a licensed professional counselor in Texas. In Texas and a couple other states, they're called LPCs. When you're associate, you are associate when you have not been fully licensed and you're under the pretty much the direct care of a licensed clinical mental health counselor or a licensed professional counselor, and someone who is considered supervisor. I am currently in internship myself, but I did start off as a clinical supervisor, which is Not the best thing to do if you don't have a clinical, like not 100% counselor background. I have clinical in my background, but not counselor. And I think it's really good to do if you want to have a private practice and then also want to be a private consultant for other upcoming interns in the field. So I am an affiliated counselor at this point in time. And then we'll be sitting down for my NCC, which is my national counselor's credentials, here very shortly. And I've been studying quite a bit. So we'll see how this goes. But yes, first of all, she's under someone named Mona Lisa Bryant. Mona Lisa is a supervisor. So that S is for the supervisor, which is given to you when you are overseeing individuals in your license, which is great. And so you can already see that she is fully up and running her supervisor. They give a little spiel about her, which I do like. But one thing about Raquel, she also has a LinkedIn. And her LinkedIn does talk about her degrees. So she is, of course, the owner, founder of the Capacity Expert website and the brand. And she is all about business. Number one, her master's degree is actually in business. She has an MBA in business, a master's in business, and then she also has a master's degree in clinical mental health, which is great. And that one comes out of Houston. So that's good to see, because if you're going to talk about mental health, please be an expert or at least be in that field where you can have a conversation about it. This is her website. It's called Success is Complicated. It looks like she is the number one. I was trying to figure out what therapy she's coming out of, and listening to her, it's definitely going to be a lot of cognitive behavior therapy, dialectical therapy, and it looks like a little bit of mindfulness. And you'll hear the breathe, like just breathe and stop and be present and be in the present. Like that's more of speak, like holistic speak, or what they call mindfulness speak. I can hear that when she's speaking, and I'm like I said, I've only been doing this for a little bit of time at this new chapter of my life, but I can tell because my undergrad is from a holistic school, and I did mindfulness for a lot of my training, so I can hear it automatically because that's years back where I got that training and graduated. And so I can tell when she's talking about reframing your mind, she's talking a lot about reframing your mindset and really starting to hone in on like who you are and being self-aware. You'll hear it as that pattern echoing. And that's the behavior therapies. That's the CBTs, that's the RBTs, that's the DBTs. Those are like the therapies that people use because they're heavily data driven, and they are shown and prone to work with the work that the client puts in. I wanted to make sure she had a license because your girl is, becoming licensed. So I want to make sure I'm going to listen to this person. Where is she coming from? And then on the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Board Council, she actually is, Raquel has her licensed professional counselor associate. So it's active to 2028. It's going to be active for 5 years. I'm assuming between now and then, she's going to become fully licensed. She is in Texas, so she's in South Texas. Pearland is definitely South Texas, Houston, pretty much. And then, of course, she has a supervisor, which is Mona Lisa Bryant, that's overseeing her. Now, Mona Lisa Bryant, and look at she's a powerhouse. Look at she's doing extremely well. I don't know if she met her or just sought after her, because you can, as a counselor, when you're doing your internship, you can search for private practice where they actually can charge you to do that. They say try not to, because it's kind of like, well, you know what? They're an internship, baby. You ain't paying them, and they ain't got extra money laying around. Most people when they're doing internships, so it's like you really don't want to charge the actual clinician to become licensed. But hey, I'm assuming because where she's at now is 2023, she's been doing this for a while. Raquel has been doing this for a while, so she probably has the money. She has a husband, she has a family, so I'm pretty sure she has her game wrapped really tight. Plus, she's a businesswoman from what I can see from her background, so she probably has the time, the energy, the money to invest in her degree and invest in her license. So Mona Lisa is a mental health therapist, an advocate. She's a speaker, wellness retreat curator, private practice consultant, which is, like I said, a lot of people do that if they don't want to. And then sometimes it's easier to do. You find out you have your best friend who's doing that. She can teach you. I mean, not best friend, but like, someone who you can trust that can mentor you, and they might not charge you. And then also an author, because why not? I mean, why not add that? So it appears that she's doing her thing. For sure. And she's a resilience expert. So that makes sense with the capacity expert on our girl Raquel's side. So let me switch back. Now we know a little bit about her background. Let's switch back over to the video.
Standpoint of how much you can hold, how much you can carry. And it has absolutely nothing to do with that. Capacity is about how do you take what you did yesterday and integrate it into today. So if I think about a jar, right? If I have water in it, right? It's not about filling it up. It's taking this, adding this piece to it, taking a rock, taking a pebble, adding that, and all of that represents your experiences. And most people don't slow down enough to really zone in that. What we do is we talk about our childhood. We'll say, because we want certainty, right? Well, childhood tells me that I'm showing up as a perfectionist because of X.
Mm-hmm.
I'm overloaded because I became a mom 6 months ago and I just got a promotion. It has nothing to do with that. Like every time that life demands something new from you, it asks of more of you. And I don't think that people have an appreciation for that. Like I always tell people, like, if you're going to sustain and live a fulfilling life, you're going to have to become okay with the truth that life does not stop asking for more. Like it's always going to be asking you for more, because that's just the way that it is. When you think about social media, AI, like,
is that when she's going into like capacity and then like having that be an evolving process or transformative process, it's very important, because she is right. Life does not stop asking for more. Because if life stops asking for more, everybody would be stagnant in their life. And there is degrees of that through cultures, through everything, right? Through people, cultures, religion. Everybody has a moment in time where they maybe could be doing a lot more and they're just not, right? But what she's saying is that life is constantly going and you have to go with life. And if you don't go with life, maybe you're not going to be able to survive long enough. We have something that's, when I used to work in the hospital, it's called failure to thrive for young babies or for children, even adopted or foster care children. If they don't get love, they don't get support. They don't get fed sometimes, but mostly like they don't have someone love up on them for those first couple, especially first couple months, but definitely, let's just say the first couple months of life, they actually can die. And I think that's the concept of life too. It's like, if you don't have the capacity and the wherewithal to continue going, regardless of what comes your way, you will have a failure. You will be failure to thrive. You will be someone who is lacking and will be slowly dying in what you're trying to do. And a lot of times, in order to accomplish that, you have to be equipped with some type of vigor, some chutzpah, some moxie, right? You got to be able to roll with the punches in life. And if you can't roll with the punches, then you're going to be left behind. So
more, and by more is saying grow.
Yeah.
Grow.
I look at that as going from, we have a culture that is really steeped in survival, but the focus should be evolution, right?
Absolutely.
So when you're constantly evolving, these are natural, right? Increased capacity, more resilience, right? Endurance, right? Going through adversity. You seek challenge. But when you're surviving, you don't want more challenge.
Nope.
You want to lessen your capacity, and you want to lessen the more things that are coming at you, less things, so that you can become more comfortable.
We want the things though, because you asked, do you want the money? Yes.
Yeah.
But do you want the problems that come?
Yeah.
Not really, but I want the money. You want the kids? Yeah, but I don't want sports, soccer. So we want the things. We're just not willing to do the work that comes
Now, I don't know what she means by like we're not willing to do the work. I think she just means in general. I don't like when people make general statements like that per se, because outside of social media, everybody's like kind of striving and trying to work towards something, even if it's working for sustainability, even if it's working towards balance. Like even if you're like a 9 to 5 worker and all you want to do is just make money and make sure you get your raises and promotions every year or every quarterly on time because you're a really good worker. Well, that's like you are striving for something and you are constantly like maneuvering and evolving so that you can be better with the times. So even someone who does drugs, let's just take that too. Someone who does drugs, a lot of times they start off, sometimes they might start off real small, but eventually that evolves to something bigger, like and more hardcore because they wanted to continue down that path. So evolving doesn't always have to do with just the positive side of things, which is we associated with that. But you can evolve in a negative direction simply because you decide to make a choice in your life that's going to keep you down that same path. And then potentially, even if it's leading towards death, well, you're progressing towards death. So you can progress towards life or progress towards death. And we have that capacity, thank goodness, to choose that in life, even if whatever your background or beliefs in, you still have the choice. So them talking about this part is interesting to me. Let's talk about mental health versus mental illness.
I want to talk about this idea of right the mental stigmas that people attach to themselves as identities, right? That you've talked about a lot that I think is an issue in society.
So before we do that, I can we just talk about what mental health is?
Yeah,
Because
mental health versus mental illness. Yeah,
yes, like I think that that is so important because I don't, when people say I'm protecting my mental health, it's the silliest thing to say to me. And it's silly because what you're saying is I'm protecting how I currently think, feel, and behave today. And if you protect how you think, feel, and behave today, you don't create space for optimization. You don't create space for those new things that you're asking for. Now, I will say that life is about seasons and chapters, so I can understand that people feel like they may need to retreat. But long term, that thinking that your mental health is fragile is false. Like your mental health isn't a thing, it's something that you use, it's a vehicle to expanding your capacity. So I hear people talk about their mental health as if it's this thing, or, you know, as if it's this, right?
yeah, like a battery.
Yeah, like there is something that you're taking care of, and when you retreat, you're no longer taking care of your mental health. And the mental health industry has, I don't know how it's become what it is today, but I do know that the understanding has lost itself, right? And to me, it's
Let's pause right there because I was a little taken back because you don't really know. Number one, she said two things that stuck out to me is like protecting my mental health. Um, that is something that has become more of a hashtag in social media age, right? But I think protecting your mental health and well-being should be a lifelong thing. Not saying that you're fragile, you're just saying that you choose to take yourself away from those things that no longer serve you. So if you come into another circumstance, let's say, and it has now led you into having to retreat and protect your peace, that is a stage which she was talking about where you should be able to do that just for your well-being. But I do think that protecting your mental health is a lifelong thing. Let's say that you have someone in your life that is like your mom or your dad, and you're still depending on them in some type of way. You have to protect your mental health and well-being. Like you have to protect your mental health in order to continue to progress. Because if you don't protect it, you will allow life to just kind of beat up on you, and it will take you down a path that could really be maladaptive. Meaning it could be something that can lead towards things in your life that could have negative impact on you. And the next thing that she said was, oh God, I think I just lost it.
It's common sense. Like if you know that you're exhausted and tired, take a break. I don't think a therapist should have to tell an adult that. That's just I mean, I have a 10-year-old, and when he's tired on the soccer field, he says, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's this misunderstanding of mental health. We all have mental health. And your mental health is supposed to be challenged, because if your mental health is challenged, then that means that you grow. And that's what therapists were put in position for.
Yeah, the reason why that's what it was, how therapy has gotten the way it's gotten, which she said before about a couple seconds prior, is mental health has gotten this way because it itself has progressed. Mental health started as a place where there were individuals and there was patterns of individuals needing mental health intervention. And even though it's not something where it's like brand new and where someone's suffering from psychosis or some type of mania, is seen as like crazy, and you got to put them you got to lock them away inpatient, which we do put people who are on those extremes inpatient still. So hasn't changed too much, but it's got this way because it's progressed. I mean, we're talking about progression. We're talking about capacity. We're talking about evolution. Mental health is meant to change. Mental health is meant to keep progressing. There are ethics and policies and things that surround mental health. And there's ways that you're taught surrounding mental health, but you yourself can progress mental health in your private practice. Her case in point, which is one thing I like about her, and of course her mentor, is that like I am also business driven. And so of course with me getting this, finishing up my degree and internship, I want to be able to have my own private practice and be able to work on my own terms and then work with clients in group as well as individual settings. And so in order to do that, you really do have to set yourself up to progress and to think about different apps and different ways of market and different ways to brand yourself in mental health. So it can be as simple as protection and protecting your mental health, but some people do not have the capacity to do any of that at that point in time. And we have to make people understand that you don't have to be necessarily someone who's suffering or had a lot of trauma, but the everyday working individual who's a little stressed out at work, therapy is for you. Therapy is for you. Even if you use your EAP, which is your employee assistance program, and you just want to go to 4 sessions so you can just let someone know what's in your mind without judgment. That option is available. Can't always be as simple as just falling asleep and waking back up, unfortunately.
We are experts in understanding that as you go through life, you're going to experience these transitory issues that have the ability to plague how you think, feel, and behave, because life is full of change. Somewhere along the way, we've become mental health experts. And I say, we're not mental health experts. That means that I would know how you should be thinking, feeling, and behaving at all times. This person, that person, that's just, right. It's unrealistic. So I say that we are experts in helping people navigate those transitory issues that they're gonna, whether it's you lose a job, you decide to have children, death, you start to experience unfulfillment, burnout, like we expect those things. So those are normal, because everybody likes to call life trauma now too. Those are normal experiences that are supposed.
So some of the things that I do notice that she's saying, there is a bias there, and that's okay because we all have biases. Everyone has it. Doesn't matter if it's really small, if it's really big, that it could hurt somebody. She has kind of poked a little fun at people having what they call is trauma or situations that have set them up in life that makes them really prone to have a more, I don't know if you want to say exacerbated mental illness or something that makes them in a position of needing a lot more help. Now, saying it like everybody's got trauma nowadays. Everybody calls everything trauma. Everybody thinks the mental health. Now, I do agree. There are some people who think they're mental health experts, baby, and you're not even in the mental health field. So that's like a big no-no for me, right? But kind of denigrating like people's battles and struggles in their own mind, because the brain and the mind and the feeling, the way we think, is so subjective. It's not objective at all, which is one of the reasons why they're still studying, like neurology and neurologists are still studying the brain and how we work and interact with it, and how we see our environment and how we react to certain things. Even research has shown that some people who are from the cut from the same cloth, that means a brother and sister, or they're from the same family, they can take one trauma, and they both will be different from that trauma. One might go to drugs and be upset and have a lifelong battle with the trauma, and the other person can be like, I'm good. So it's so subjective. So for her to kind of talk about it or belittle it, it's a little pause for me. But then, like I said, she's a capacity expert. So I can see where she probably will, even throughout her coaching and throughout her mental health speak, she will probably be a little bit more condescending when it comes to someone possibly saying, well, I'm just so anxious at work and I just can't stand it. And Sally Sue then called me a name one too many times. And like something that people feel is like, girl, get over it,
Posed to challenge your mental health because life wants to stretch you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mental illness, you and I may never experience a mental illness because there's a such thing as prevention rather than intervention, right? I understand mental health, so I know that if I decide to start a new job, I'm going into a new environment, which means that it has the ability to shake up my world. So I may seek some support, or I've developed enough that I don't necessarily need that. Mental illness, on the other hand, is when we start to talk about it. It is depression and it is anxiety. I want to use anxiety, for example, because when I was training for this mental health program, I came across somebody that really lived with anxiety. And I was like, oh, shoot,
Yeah.
this is anxiety. Like, you can't go to work.
Yeah.
Like, you've gotten your education and it's difficult for you because you thought you saw a spider last night. And now it's like,
See, that's the thing. It's like that little bit of belittling someone else's experience. That's a very thin line to tread, because someone might have arachnophobia, and to them, a spider is a big thing to see that. Or maybe someone poured a box of spiders on their head and she was bitten up and put in the hospital for 10 months. I mean, who knows? Whatever. Or maybe she just saw a spider and that thing, just because she heard a loud noise, it scared her. I mean, that part is very hard, because I know that we all do this in life, and it's not something that you necessarily think about. It's because of your environment and the way you've grown up and your circumstances that has shaped you. And something that's very simple in your mind, you can't comprehend. Why are you getting so upset off of something like that? Because you yourself don't suffer from that. I don't suffer from schizophrenia. So I might not be able to understand it in its totality, but I can understand it and empathize with it, right? You can empathize and learn to work with someone who's actively working on their schizophrenic or schizoaffective symptoms. But because you yourself don't go through it, don't belittle somebody else's experience.
to me, I couldn't process it. When you think about mental illness, your ability to function, to cope, it robs you of that. That's the difference. Because we're tired, we're exhausted, you had a bad day, you had 2 bad days, you had 3 bad days. That's not a mental illness.
Yeah.
That's life. So, and I think we use those words interchangeably, and they're not. Like, we have to make the separation, because people that actually live with schizophrenia or a bipolar, they don't walk around and say, I have bipolar.
Right.
I have bipolar. I live with bipolar. They don't. In fact, they're the people that are in therapy, and they're saying,
the show Kanye. It's so funny because when I go around and I've seen this when they have schizophrenia or they say I'm having symptoms of, or bipolar, I'm having symptoms of. And it is just a DSM-5 TR, like I guess you can say textbook symptom diagnostic chart, I guess you could say. Nations, they might be hearing voices. They might have bouts and patterns of inability to function and properly. They might be dealing with possibly having to question things because maybe what they're seeing and what they're thinking and what they're doing is not, it's not congruent. And so there are some people who operate like that, and they will tell you. People have ADHD, especially in Washington. If someone has mental health disorder, they will tell you, baby. That's the one thing about Washington State. You got a lot of people who are diagnosed with just anything from anxiety, depression, manic depression, all the way up to psychosis, mania, BPD, bipolar disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, all those different things. And they will let you know. And they'll walk around letting you know when they're experiencing some symptoms of it, especially if they're in therapy, if they're experiencing some, like how they used to experience it, they'll say something to you for sure.
Why am I not normal?
Right, right.
That's what they're saying. And you're still trying to figure out how to help them because there's only but so much that you can really do. So that's important. I get worked up when I talk about that because I'm like,
I think it's real. I think people do over label themselves. And then I think you shrink yourself when you do that. Of this mental health battery that you have per day, which is what it becomes. So you decrease your capacity to this, and it becomes a reality just through the placebo effect. This is what you want to feel, well, this is what you're gonna feel.
exactly.
This is what you think you can do, well, this all you can do.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people, they statistically say 19.1% of the expressing yourself in different ways and allowing that energy to get off you. Person anxiety, they looping the same thought over and over and over and over. You seen that spider? Now you're thinking about that spider all day. So that same feeling is traveling through that nervous system, the way you felt when you first experienced that spider. So it's like, all right, now you need a counteractive experience.
I'm glad that you just said something about the nervous system because, again, I don't think we understand that either. Your nervous system does not control, it communicates. And I always, that's like me walking in here and I say, 19 keys, my nervous system told me that the vibes ain't right. Your nervous system cannot detect good vibes. Your nervous system does not know the difference between if a bear was here or I'm sitting with 19 keys, right? Your nervous system communicates up here and it says, am I safe? Is this a threat? And then it settles itself based off of how you react and respond to the world. I think about it as a thermostat, right? Most people want the nervous system to be on 73, but if we go back to the concept of capacity, you don't want to be at 73 all the time because that means that we're no longer positioning ourselves for growth. So this concept of your nervous system is, it remembers, I think about it from pregnancy standpoint, right? I didn't like hot fries at once. I get pregnant. My nervous system didn't remember that I didn't like hot.
Okay. We're going to go past that a little bit. When it comes to her talking about the nervous system as something that is really interpreter. And that's what your brain does. Your brain takes all these different images and different perceptions and feelings. It uses all the fives. It uses what you have in your body to interpret the world around us. And the only way we're able to see the world is through our eyes and through our hearing and through our touch and through our taste and so and through our smell. So we interpret the world those ways. So it's part of the nervous system, right? But some people's nervous system could be overactive, overreactive, where because of some of the things that happened to them in their life, they tend to be very overstimulated or possibly react really quickly. If someone's more balanced in life, then they tend to interpret the world around them and make their own logical conclusion, right? So kind of like she's trying to say, calm down, because we're so like reacting to what we hear in the trends. I think that's kind of what she's getting at. And she's like, but just calm down. Like, this is like, all you're supposed to do is interpret the world around you, but you interpret it and it's shaped on your experiences as well as with your God-given things. I guess you can say your senses and your God-given stuff. But the world and our environment does shape who we are, for sure.
Like if you can explain it to yourself in those circumstances, okay, well, danger is a lack of thinking a lot of times, like when you have that fear. But when you're thinking through something, that's when you start strategizing through it. And then when you can bring it from a feeling to something that's logical, then it's practical. Then it's like, okay, this is not fearful. It's
And then
just,
it becomes being.
yeah.
It becomes who you are.
When you're thinking, you're not being fearful.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So now you're thinking through the problem. That makes you be present, right? Before I go speak on stages, and I tell people that a lot of people, that's the biggest anxiety they get, right? Is public speaking, right? Or getting caught off guard and having to speak. One of the ways you do is you like start counting backwards or do the alphabets backwards in your head. The reason is because it forces your brain to think and become present. So with any other outside thoughts that you are having, they can't enter at this moment because your brain is not good at multitasking, right? So what we do is we give ourselves too much time to think about what we're afraid of, right? Instead of being present of where we actually are.
And we don't talk about post-traumatic growth disorder. And when I think of trauma, I always say trauma is, you have objective trauma and you have subjective trauma. Objective trauma, and I'll continue to use the most recent event, is LA fires, right? You could not have expected that to happen, right? Like people didn't think that when they woke up tomorrow that they wouldn't have homes anymore. You're caught off guard. Your sense of safety has been robbed. You're helpless. You're hopeless. Subjective trauma is, you and I grew up in the same household. Mom used to yell at both of us. You were like, Mom is crazy. She be tripping. Mom has really messed up my childhood. That's subjective trauma because it's based off of your perceptions and how you've internalized something.
The story you tell yourself.
And the story that you tell yourself. So this concept of you can't heal from trauma, like it's absurd to me, because if trauma is subjective and we still have this idea of post-traumatic growth disorder, you don't tell people that they can't heal from trauma. Like, that's no hope. And it goes back to what you were saying about identity, right? Now I've added another label to me. I walk around with trauma for the rest of my life as if I can't grow from it. And then struggle becomes a part of your identity. And I think that that's really important for us, right? Because we're already fighting so many other narratives. We don't need any more labels. Like, don't give me another label.
And I think that's kind of a psyop that has been specifically for our people, is to constantly see ourselves as victims. Because psychologically, if you want to be a winner, you have to think that you are a winner, right? Nobody goes into a boxing match.
You know, this is one thing that wears me out when people say our people, because I feel like on a large scale, Blacks, people of color, are probably the most resilient and probably the ones that most likely do not. I don't feel like they really do the victim stuff. I know there's individuals that can, but I think as a people as a whole, just based off the last couple centuries, you have seen what they call as people of color or Blacks or American Indians, whatever you want to call people who look like him, her, me, right? You want to say that it's like we're always in the victim role. And there's something towards being in a victim role, right? That could be something that is a behavioral situation where you are always beaten down and downtrodden, or you're always oppressed, and therefore you have just given up. And then it's woe is me. But then there's the other side where I've seen, you know, especially with just even between the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, well, 50s, 60s, and 70s, that a lot of people of color have been able to rise and pick themselves up. There has been so many laws that have changed. The wealth hands have changed even our classification, how we are on paper, our socioeconomic status. And so it has almost every generation, you can say a person of color has had some type of oppression, but yet they still continue to continue to strive. So this whole, especially our people, we always want to be the victim. No, I don't think so. That's just my opinion. I don't think so, because like I said, I've seen, looking at history, that we've picked ourselves up every single time. And I come from a family or a lineage that has picked themselves up every single time. There might be a couple outliers, what they call, or a couple things that, people who maybe don't want to, and that's fine. But as a people in general, as a whole, we have always continued to strive. We've always progressed. And so that narrative that's given is I feel is a false narrative.
Thinking that they're going to lose and end up winning. You can't accidentally win, right? They consider that to be luck. That's gambling.
Yeah.
But in real life, winners believe that they're winners. They believe they come from winning, or they have the post-traumatic growth. They have a chip on their shoulder saying, because I went through this, this is easy for me.
Yep.
Right? So there's two ways you can internalize it, but most people internalize it from the traumatic standpoint that I come from nothing, so woe is me. I have all these things that I must get over. And it's like when I teach history, it's like history is taught in a way that only victimizes us, right? It's a case in point. If universe that is the most successful you could possibly be, right? At the highest height of actualization for yourself that you can possibly obtain, from wealth, success, family, influence, right? Just, this is the peak you, right? I think that the more you sit down, the more you sit with that idea of thinking about that person, right? The more you start integrating into that person. But then it goes into the details. Okay, what is the extreme differences in their habits, in the way they think, and mine?
Yeah.
Right? Because the way I think is the only thing that limits me from having access to that universe, right? And I also look at it like the fact that you can have a day that's really good, right? Where everything just seems to flow right. I mean, you feel immaculate. Your joy levels is just high. Like, it's like you walking down the street just saying what's up to everybody. You just feel good. I look at that as almost like you had access to a dimension of a version of you that lives like that forever.
Yeah.
But you only got access to that version for a day. Because
going past that, the highest, accessing your higher self is a part of a couple theorists. One of them are Maslow's, a couple of them. And they believe that once you have your basic needs met, and once you're able to graduate from the bottom pretty much and make your way up the tower, up the pyramid, up the ladder, you are able to access your higher sense of self. And accessing your higher sense of self does take not only time and preparation and strategy, but it actually does take being comfortable and having security in all the steps beforehand. That high sense of self is like that God, right? That God-like version of yourself, where you have the wealth that you wanted to acquire, you have the possessions, things that are tangible, you had the family, you had the love, you had the care, you had the job, the finances, all those different things. You had the looks, the body, whatever, that highest sense of self. But it takes time to get to that highest sense of self, because there are so many obstacles and things to progress from. But truthfully, in order to have that, let's just not even have to listen to this. In order to have the higher sense of self, you really truly do have to have your baseline intact and secure. And that's the whole basis. You get stuck and stagnant in a place that you have received trauma in or hadn't had a good experience in. But once you're able to maneuver past that, now you are accessing or going towards your higher sense of yourself.
which is this idea of mental health. I think we need more mental resilience, and we need to be in mental flow and adaptation with the world. Peace, family. This has been your high-level conversation. 19 keys, and this is high-level conversation.
I think what they were trying to get at throughout the whole discussion, and it's 2 hours long, and that's if you're just cleaning up and if you're walking, whatever you want to do, and you're able to watch this in its totality, is that Raquel was trying to really let people know that you have the capacity to reframe and change your circumstances. The one thing I talk about on my channel and is through like my mindfulness meditation, as well as some of the discussions I have on Instagram where I do a couple like posted reels as I talk about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And what all cognitive behavior therapy is being able to take a circumstance that you have not reacted to as well in the past and take your core beliefs or the things that are kind of your core beliefs could hold you back or they can progress you. And let's say they're just holding you back just for mental health, therapeutic reasons, right? And be able to shift that way of thinking so that you can start reacting differently to circumstances. And I think that's all she's getting at. Someone who is considered a capacity expert is just someone who's saying that I am going to equip you with the tools to maneuver in life so you don't have to access my type of coaching again. As someone who is actively pursuing mental health therapy and working with individuals on a daily basis, that's what we really truly want. Like that's what a real therapist wants. You want to facilitate change and facilitate transformation and evolution with the help, with pretty much 90% help of that client to take hold of their life and take control of the way that they deal with circumstances that come their way. And in order to do that, there has to be what they call a mental health paradigm shift. You have to shift your way of thinking in order to get to that place. I myself make sure that I have taken the time to not only eat healthy because, of course, I want to get some weight down, but also because of my health. Like I want to be healthy. I don't want to go to the doctor and have them say, yeah, so you've been suffering from diabetes or something this whole time, and we're really going to have to give you medication and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to have to get to that point where I have to be scared into being healthy. I just want to do it on my own. And I promised myself I would, and I have kept that promise to myself. It's just taking those steps. So whether I'm walking 10,000 steps, between 75 and 10,000 steps a day, to meditation, quieting my mind, being present, whether I'm being present with my daughter, those are the things I've cognitively restructured because I was beginning to neglect those things based off of just being overwhelmed by circumstance. And in order not to be overwhelmed, you really do have to start being self-aware. And being self-aware is something that takes time. It's something that has you be truthful with yourself. You are really going to have to, they say that shadow work. That is the shadow work that you have to do within yourself and be like, who am I? And who am I? Who am I? What's my true self? Do I have a pattern of X, Y, and Z? Have I been doing something for so long that I don't even realize I'm doing this in a way that's not beneficial to my life? And then once you start questioning who you are in your life and start becoming more aware and then being truthful with who you are, then you can move to the next level of starting to change your circumstances. And changing your circumstances has nothing to do with just being present and being mindful. And then every time that maybe you open your mouth or you have a thought, you really try to reframe that thought if it's not considered something that's conducive to your growth. So if you're saying I always fail at everything because you just couldn't do something well at that moment in time, say that maybe this time I did not do as well because maybe I was not as prepared as I should have been. But this next time I do it, I'm going to do well because I know that this is my goal in life. And I know that because this is what I'm manifesting for my life, or you can say manifesting, or you can say this is the goal that I want to reach in my life. I know that these are the steps I have to take next time to make sure I don't fail, right? But failure is a lesson. And failure can be anything, whether it's in voluntary or voluntary. And I've learned to take because I've been through a lot in my life. There are things that happen to me. I just realize that they happen and I reevaluate and say, why did that happen? And if it's no fault of my own, then I say, then this happened because maybe that was not the place I needed to be to grow. And if it was a fault of my own, I say, okay, this is what led to this circumstance. And this is what stunted me for a moment in time. But because I notice it, I see it, I call it out. Now I'm able to maneuver past it. And so having conversations like this is therapy occult. You know, it's a theme that they have for the topic, but it's kind of like a grab because of course therapy is as a stigma in a lot of communities. But I do like the fact that they've had this conversation. I do like the fact that Raquel is on the road to becoming licensed, and she's speaking to people as a matter of fact, which is great because you really do have to understand yourself in order to progress in life. And you got to accept the flaws and all, baby. And that's the key. So yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching the video. It was kind of long and I'll chop this up and it'll probably look real choppy and I might do a couple takes. But I do want people to understand that if there is a time that you do need help, don't be afraid to reach out for help.